Hello, my name is Janelle Preston, and I am the Act Early Ambassador to the state of Utah. I am so glad that you have joined today, and I'm excited to be sharing the many ways that you, as parents, can help your children learn and grow by spotting the amazing milestone moments. There are so many of those milestones to celebrate. And tracking those milestones helps us as parents support our child's healthy development. If you're like me, we all know that our children are amazing, and watching them grow is one of our most favorite things to do. But if you're also like me, you didn't really know which ones to be worried about, or you didn't know all the milestones and at what age they were supposed to happen. By understanding our children's healthy development, we're not only able to celebrate those, but to act early if there is a concern. And so I'm really excited to talk to us all about this today. Hopefully, what we'll be able to talk about is what is developmental monitoring, how to use those resources that are available to help us, and as well as things that we as parents can do to help our children learn and grow, and what to do if we do have a concern. So, when I say developmental milestones, what I'm really meaning is that things that that most children can do by a certain age in how they play, learn, speak, act, and move. We know that we all move at our own pace, right? Some children will reach milestones slightly later or earlier, but most children reach those milestones around the same age. There are things when developmental milestones are things like our 6-month-old turning and responding when we say their name, or a 12-month-old waving by, an 18-month-old pointing out that cool airplane when we're on our walk, or a 2-year-old speaking in short sentences. Those are just some of those, a few examples of the amazing milestones that offer us clues on how our child is progressing in their development. So, like I mentioned earlier, as parents, we love celebrating our littles, right? But gosh, did they grow up so quickly? We're amazed by everything they do every day. I remember when my firstborn started crawling. Seriously, the cutest thing I ever saw. We called it the crawl because he would keep his legs straight, and then crawl. Seemed very ineffective to me, but boy, could he get places, and he really hasn't stopped since. Um, I could probably tell you the big milestones that my kiddos did. Think about some of the things that your kids did. Like, when have they walked? When did they sit up? When did they start eating solid foods? Yeah, those big ones we're able to remember. But now think about some of those ones that we don't really always celebrate. Like, can I remember when they started stacking blocks? How about when they counted? How about when they started naming their friends? Did I even know that defiant behavior and stranger danger is typical child development? So by tracking our child's milestones, it becomes fun and it's easy to do, but it also helps us understand our children and know what to expect next. It helps us make sure that our child is developing for their age, and also makes us not so worried about if they're not doing something yet. It also provides that important information to be able to share with our child's doctor or really any early child care provider that is we interact with in regards to our children. So it really also, like I said, not only helps us know what to expect and if our children are on track for it, but it also gives us those signs or the way to catch it early if there are signs of possible developmental delays. And so I'm going to ask you guys to just kind of think about this. I'm going to go over some milestones, see if we can all see if we get it correctly. Believe me, I still don't always get them correctly. So, how about using simple gestures like shaking their head or waving their hands? Did you guys guess 12 months? How about if they're going to tell us what will happen next in a book? Yeah, 4 years. How about if they know what ordinary things are for? So if I had a, like if they saw a phone or a comb, yeah, 18 months is when they start knowing what those things are for. How about if they point to things when named? So if I said, "Show me the shoes," yeah, 2 years. So, knowing when milestones are happening, I'm also able to then know whether or not my child is on track, but also not, like I said, not get worried if they're not doing those things yet. I'd love as a parent to be able to have that knowledge and be able to have those important conversations and be more of an active kind of active in that conversation with things. So, the other thing I also always love to do is understand that child development is a journey. And by doing monitoring and screening, it helps us understand the path that our child is taking. And we need to do both monitoring and screening, but they are two very different things. And so if we think about what developmental monitoring is, it really is anybody can do developmental monitoring. And it's really us looking for those developmental milestones from birth to age 5. Because we do know that any if we catch any of those concerns at an early age, we know that we can make the biggest difference in our children's life. Um, Developmental monitoring is a great way to celebrate our children's progress, as well as being able to talk about our child's progress with our doctors or early child care providers. It helps us know what to expect next with it. Developmental screening is done by a trained professional. They look for those developmental milestones and know whether or not our child needs more help because it's what their role is, right? Is to help us understand whether or not our child needs more help with development. And those developmental screenings are what help us understand that. So, using both of those together helps us understand our child's journey. However, you know your child best. While it is recommended that all children be screened using a standardized validated tool at child visits or health visits or early child care visits, whatever you want to call them, at 9, 18, or 30 months, and that every child be screened for autism at 18 and 24 months. You, as parents, know what your children are doing, you know them best. So, complete those milestone checklists. Make that appointment if you are concerned about it. Talk with your doctor. Always feel free to reach out to Early Intervention, Help Me Grow, your public school district, or Early Head Start. Even during COVID, you can still contact your early intervention program or your local school district to have your child evaluated if you have a concern. And that is really the most important thing, right? If we're noticing things with our children, we want to make sure that we're acting early because that can make the biggest difference. The other thing in using developmental monitoring and screening together is understanding what the doctor is saying when that screening is completed. So, was there a reason to be concerned, or is my child on task, on track? Having that conversation, normalizing that conversation with the doctor, and making sure that you understand what the next steps are that they're saying. Are they asking to do further evaluations? Do they just want you to call early intervention? Why? Because is there a little bit of a delay? Is there some concerns around that? So the material that we're going to talk about is called Learn the Signs, Act Early, and it's been developed by the Center of Disease Control. They're fun, free, and easy to use, and the milestones come in a variety of options. And we're going to talk about some of the ones that I like using. You are free to always look at CDC's website to see all the materials available with it. So the ones that I love are called the Milestone Checklists, and they come in a paper form. They're individual checklists. There's a brochure, or there's also the Milestone Moments booklet. And this will probably say how old I am, but I really love paper and pencil. So the Milestone Moment booklet for me, and if I move it, it's going to go out of the screen, so I have to hold it in front of me, is just an easy one. I was able to fit it in my diaper bag. I also then was able to pull it out if I was at a play date and somebody was talking to me about things. But I could easily find out whether or not go through the checklist pretty quickly with that. And I always had it right there at my doctor's visits or anything. So this is the one that I loved on the Milestone. But if somebody asked me about child development, I may just give them the brochure with it. So some fun ways to use these checklists. And the checklists really cover the span of early child development. So from 2 months going all the way up to 5 years of age. And they list the milestones across the 4 areas of development. They are ways to, once again, identify causes for celebration, or to identify if we need to pursue further evaluations. This does not replace developmental monitoring, does not replace developmental screening. Those need to happen together. But by having that parent engagement, it really increases our understanding as a parent of what the developmental screener is telling us with it. So the other thing that I love about the individual ones, and that's what's showing on this screen, is the printout, but is that it has what can you do. So on the back side, it's what can you do for your 2 month. It's also in this the Milestone Moments booklet as well. Just right over here on this page, it says some ideas of what I can do. And I just find it always helpful because as a mom, maybe I wasn't 100% sure. So at my 2-month-old, for my 2-month-old, maybe if I put a mirror, a baby safe mirror in their crib, it's going to start encouraging them to look at themselves. Or, I need to remember to always pay attention to my child's cries, or being able to hold that toy or rattle, not just give it to them, kind of hold it up above their head, make them work a little bit for that. So it gives me, it not only can I celebrate those milestones, but it gives me some ideas of what I can do with my kids. Um, and while I love paper and pencil versions, I also always have my phone. And so, of course, there's an app to track those milestones, get those activities, and learn and understand when to act early. There's a couple of things that I really love about this app that, as my role as an early intervention provider, I use some of these all the time with it. Um, so while I don't always customize the child's photo, because there lots of times I'm not entering my own kids. If I had my own kids, I would definitely put their pictures in there. Um, but my kids are now teenagers, and sadly, it doesn't go up to what an 18-year-old should be doing, right? But you can customize it. But the thing that I love is that you can add multiple children. So there are times that I'm going in to do a visit for the older child, and the mom asked me a question about the younger kid. And I haven't really thought about what a 4-month-old should be doing in a while. And so um, I just pull out this app and or have the parents pull it up, and we go through it right there, and I can just add it and be able to talk to the parents about that. Um, the other thing that I really love is that it does provide a corrected age for children born prematurely. And boy, is that so helpful if you have a child born prematurely. My daughter was born 2 months premature. And sometimes when I was going through those checklists, you know, I would look, she would be 12 months old. So I would go off that, but she's not really meeting all of those because really, in reality, she's only 10 months. And so having that to be adjusted and it pulling up that correct age for me is always really helpful with it. The other thing that I really, it does, like I said, it's really talks about the how many more I have to go. So if you can see right here, I've only have 3 more to mark off in that social area. 3 more to go before I've mastered, my kid has mastered all those skills in movement. So it really keeps track of those and indicates the progress that my child is making with that. The other thing, and to be honest, I just used this the other day in one of my home visits, is that you can really share that information pretty easily with anybody. So, like I said, I was at a home visit and the mom had downloaded this app, and because I'd probably talked to her about it before, I was there for older brother. She had some questions about the younger sibling. And she said, I filled this out and I wanted to kind of run this by you. Well, instead of her going through each individual question with me, I said, well, shoot, email me over the summary and I'll pull it up right here and I'll kind of glance through it and then we can kind of talk about it. She was able to immediately email that to me. I pulled up the child's summary and we were able to have a conversation that we were both involved in. Not only was she kind of giving her examples, but I could then also give it from a more in-depth area. And we talked about whether or not she should move on to do a more developmental screener, or if, you know, some of those things she could continue to work on with it. So it really helped the mom be more actively engaged. And I think as a mom, that's really, or as a parent, that's really what we want, is to understand what's kind of going on with our child. So just then also some things that you can jot down and talk to your doctor about, because I don't know how many times you guys have gone to a doctor's appointment and you think, I'm going to talk to him about X, Y, and Z. And then the doctor says, so do you have any final questions? And you go, well, no. And I walk out the door and go, oh, I was going to ask him about X, Y, and Z. Well, now I can jot that down. And so then when my doctor actually asks me those, I already have them written down with it. So the other fun material that helps us as parents promote that early literacy, but also continuing to understand our child's developmental journey, which, that is our goal as a parent, to understand that, is these children's books. So the children's books, they're just fun and interactive. The thing that I love, and I probably am not going to hold it up right, but on every so often on a page, there's a little leaf or a paw or a star, depending on what book you're reading, that talks about the child's development, a developmental milestone that goes along with that activity or a fun thing that I could try with my child. So not only am I able to work on some early literacy by reading these books to my kid, it's another way to ensuring that I'm celebrating those milestones and seeing if my kids can do those things. Um, and the other ones that I love to, like I said, there's a ton of material I'm using, and I'm sharing with you guys the ones that for me as a parent were most useful, and the ones that I tend to promote to the families that I work with, that I think are really pretty helpful. And so one is really this how to get help for your child. And it really is those tips of how do I bring that up to my doctor? If I'm worried about what my child's doing, so maybe my child is 2 and he only has 4 or 5 words, and I know that I really want my child at 2 years to be using multiple sentences. My doctor's not that concerned, or, for whatever reason. I have some tips of how I can bring that up. And that's, one of the other things of why I always encourage parents to understand more about that development so that they can have those conversations with their doctor or early child care providers to know why I'm worried, or what's going on with my kid, because you guys know your kids, and all of that. And the other one is this Vroom. And so Vroom is another interactive website that really shares the importance of tracking your child's development and using those brain building tips to add learning to everyday moments. And as a parent, we can never have too many tools in our toolkit. I always call it the parent toolkit. And boy, the more that we have, the easier it is, right? Because not everything that works for one works for another, or not everything that works in one situation works for another. And so I love having multiple ideas and multiple ways to encourage that learning, or in increasing my child's development. My last and final thing is just remember that as parents, it's a tough job, and you guys are doing amazing work. By really looking for those milestones, it helps us understand our children's journey. It helps us see and be able to celebrate those milestones and identify if there is a concern. You don't have to do it alone. There's lots of resources out there to help. And don't ever think that you shouldn't, or there's not. You're always free, and I encourage you to call early intervention. Look at Help Me Grow, have them do a developmental screener, talk to your doctor about it. You guys are so cool in helping your child learn and grow. And we know that the earlier we identify any type of delay um, or disability, the earlier we can act on that is where we can make that real difference. Early childhood is a great way to help meet those milestones. But as parents, we're their best teacher, and so by knowing what those milestones are helps us get those. So, and always feel free to reach out to me. This is my contact information. You can reach out to me at any time for the materials. If I have them, I will send them to you, email them to you, mail them out to you. But you can also always look at the CDC's Learn the Signs Act Early homepage. We have a Utah Learn the Signs page that you can access that has some Utah specific resources, as well as follow us on social media. So we have a Utah Learn the Signs social media, Instagram, and Twitter that we just always talk about those developmental milestones, provide resources and information as we get that. So, just parents, you guys are doing a great job. Thank you so much for taking the time to learn about some of these materials. And once again, just have fun celebrating your children because boy, do they grow up quickly.